Hi, welcome to Stories on Stage Online Edition. I'm Monique Mulligan. Today I'm chatting with Lisa Ireland about her new book, The Secret Life of Shirley Sullivan. A former primary school teacher and the author of 5 other novels, including The Shape of Us and The Art of Friendship. It's this latest novel that seems to have everyone talking about Lisa. Kelly Rimmer describes it as one of her favourite books ever. Sally Hepworth calls it Lisa's breakout novel. So today I'm going to put it out there myself that of Lisa's novels, this is my favourite. And we're going to talk about why readers have fallen in love with this one and with her character Shirley. Lisa, welcome to Stories on Stage.
Hi, Monique. It's so great to be here. It's a shame it's not actually in person over there in WA. I would love to be with you in person, but it's really lovely to see you and to chat with you today.
Yeah, it is. We've been talking about doing this for quite a while, haven't we? And it just hasn't come together.
Yeah. So, but anyway, it's great to be here. So I'm really excited to talk to you and the listeners today about the book.
Yeah, great. Well, we've already got some people who've signed in. Jessica has said hello to us and she's got a couple of questions which I'll try to get to as well. But Lisa, let's get stuck into chatting about this wonderful book. So at its heart, The Secret Life of Shirley Sullivan is a love story, but it shows more than the falling in love and those kind of, the romance of it. It's something so much deeper than that, and I think readers have been really taken with it. To me, it's told with the dual timelines. You've got the present day and then you've got the past, and I like the way you skillfully kind of take us on that journey where you start from the characters' first meeting and then bring them so that converges with the present. But maybe you can tell us a little bit about this story.
Okay, so it's about Shirley Sullivan, who is 79 years old. Shirley's husband Frank, they've had a long marriage of many decades, and Frank has found himself in a nursing home, and it's actually against Shirley's wishes. So at the beginning of the book, we don't know why, but Shirley does not have medical guardianship of Frank, and their daughter Fiona has placed Frank in a home because Fiona truly believes this is the best thing for Frank, who has dementia. But Shirley doesn't agree, and she wants to take Frank back to Geelong. The nursing home is actually in Sydney, and Shirley wants to take Frank back to Geelong where they have spent most of their married life. And she wants to do that by taking him on the road trip of a lifetime. And so Frank's always wanted to do this particular road trip with her, and for one reason or another, it hasn't happened during their married life. So as you say, Monique, it is a dual timeline. So that's the driver of the story, is the road trip, and of course she sneaks him out of the nursing home, so it's against her daughter's wishes, and they are being chased by her daughter and the authorities because it's considered that Frank and Shirley may be in some danger just because they're elderly and Frank is unwell. So that's the driver. But as you say, there is the historical story as well, which traces from when they met in 1961, and that eventually the two storylines do converge.
And you did it so skillfully. I think that's a real art, trying to weave together the two different timelines. And maybe we'll have some time to talk about that a little bit more later, how you do that. But for me, just reading it, it was that memory lane kind of nostalgic walk on the one part. And then on the other, it was just like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen with them? Are they going to get caught? That lovely suspense. I cried a little bit, and I laughed, a lot, and just wanted to know what was going to happen. You're really rooting for these characters, aren't you? Just want them to to get on this holiday. So, yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Jessica says hello.
Hi, Jessica.
So, and Jessica's got a couple of questions, which we'll try to ask. One of those ones I think will be a really good one to ask you. There's a quote in this book and it's saying, it's funny how ageing changes a person's perspective on life. When you realise there are fewer years in front of you than behind, it becomes easier to filter out the trivialities and concentrate on what matters. And for me, what I really love about this book is that it is that celebration of life, and it highlights that there's the good times and the bad times. But it is very much a story about ageing, about how the elderly are seen or not seen. And I wondered if you could talk to us a little bit more about that, why it's important to you to look at that issue.
Sure. Actually, an issue that's really sort of very close to my heart for a couple of reasons. Both of my parents died in their early 60s. So they were very young, vibrant people. And I often hear people complaining about aging. And I do it myself. You know, we will often, I think it's something that we all do, that we'll say, oh, I'm getting so old. But actually, aging is a privilege, and it's something that we shouldn't take for granted. And if we are lucky enough to age, I think that that's something that we should grab onto and make the most of, and try and live our lives to the fullest for the entirety of our lives. I mean, of course, illness notwithstanding, but the second part of that is, particularly for women, it's for all older people, but particularly for women. I really think in society we tend to dismiss elderly people, and women in particular, as not having value or not being able to contribute, that they've already made their contribution to the workforce or to raising children or whatever. And so that now in their elderly years, we may, think that we love and respect elderly people, but we often deny them agency. We often don't listen to them and don't see them, and think that when I say we, I'm meaning younger and middle-aged people, that we know better. And I also think that we wouldn't stereotype other groups. So in society, for instance, we are very careful, or we should be very careful, not to stereotype groups of people according to their race or their gender. Or we understand that women, for instance, are a diverse gender, that not all women are the same, and that the extension of that is that all older women are not the same. So, but representations of older women often, not so much recently, fortunately, but often in fiction, whether it be written fiction or on the screen, the image that we get often being portrayed of older women is of the sweet little old grandma, someone who's interested in knitting and her grandchildren, and doesn't really have hopes and dreams and desires of her own. And knowing quite a few older women now, I know that's not true. Like I know many older women, and they are as diverse as any other group in society. Some women may be very interested in their grandchildren and knitting and crocheting, but they also might like to do other things as well. And so I wanted to celebrate aging women and show a woman who was strong and in full possession of her own wants, needs and desires, and was, finally, after years of pretty much putting everyone else first, that she was going to do what she wanted to do. So that's really sort of part of the inspiration for the story.
I think it's great because Shirley comes across as this really alive character. She's just, I feel like I know her just reading that, and it's lovely when you meet characters like that when you're reading. So hello from Geraldine, and also hello from Danielle a little bit earlier. And I think, I look at Shirley, and then I look at, say, this issue of ageing and elderly people, older people still having their dreams and things like that. And I think about my mother, who is certainly not, elderly. She's in her mid-60s now. She is. What I'm thinking is that you write off the fact that they have their own dreams, that your mother, that your parents do. So often you're just so concerned about your own needs and wants and wishes and things that aren't going right for you in your life. And then one day you just look at your parents a little bit differently, and you think, oh, my mum, she had and still has these dreams. When do you think that moment came for you?
really sadly not until after my mum passed away.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's why this has been such an important book
Yeah.
to me. I think that when my mum died, I was still a young mum myself. I had very small children. One of my children was still a tiny baby when my own mother died, and so I hadn't had that sort of experience of, um, I was still sort of very much bogged down in that period of my own life. And of course, I desperately missed my mother. I grieved for her. But if I'm absolutely brutally honest, I guess I was grieving the whole in my life. Whereas as I've aged myself, and I'm in my mid 50s now, and I've got big children and like only one left at home, I'm starting to realize that this is a time in life, like my mum wasn't really, she was a decade older than me when she died, and I had ceased to see her, or had never probably, I'd always seen her as my mum and not as
Yeah.
a woman with her own hopes and dreams. And the interesting thing is, much like Fiona in the novel, the daughter, who's about the same age as me, I think that my mother's quiet actions of rebellion paved the way for me to have the life that I've had. She
Mm.
was very much a woman of her time, much like Shirley, in that she was a woman who was a homemaker, first of all, a wife, a mother, and put her husband and her children before her own wants and needs. Um, and yet she raised a daughter who to
Mm.
be, very independent, and to put her own needs first. So I think that was kind of an interesting thing about writing the novel, is looking at how women's lives have changed
Yeah.
in a relatively short period of time. Like if you look back, from in the early chapters where Shirley's in the 1960s, and she never thinks that she won't get married, or she fears that she won't, but that's her desire. She
Yeah.
doesn't think outside of that marriage and children is the be all and end all. That's her ambition, and it's because that was what society in general put on women in those days. There weren't any other options. So I think in that way my mum was quite like that, and it took me to middle age to, unfortunately, and I'm sad that I didn't recognize it while she was still alive. So sorry, mum, but I've got there now.
Yeah, but you know, you may have come there later than I think we all feel those kind of regrets where we think, oh, I wish I'd known this about, say, my grandmother or my mother. And I think that's a natural feeling for us to have. And there's probably many women who are watching this are thinking that same thing. There's so much they didn't know. But I feel like this book is really, it's like a tribute almost, to this, your mother. I feel that from this book. I feel that that's one of the reasons so many people are really talking about it in the way that they are, is because there's just this expression of love coming from it that, they're all feeling through these pages.
It definitely is. I definitely, and it's interesting because it probably didn't start out that way.
Yeah.
I don't know whether, unless you want to talk about this a little bit later, but it would. I can talk a little bit about the inspiration.
Yeah,
for
why
the
don't you
book,
do
if
that? Yeah, I was going to ask
Yeah.
anyway.
So I found. So I had read an article in the newspaper many years ago about an elderly couple that escaped from their nursing home, which is really, it's not that unusual. That does happen from time to time, less so as security is getting tighter in nursing homes, but in days gone by where the security wasn't as quite as tight, it's not that unusual for people to wander off. But this didn't appear to be a couple that had wandered off. In fact, so they were a married couple in the same nursing home, and they were kind of like a Bonnie and Clyde sort of couple to me, because they were on the run somewhere, and they managed to, so they were on the run for like 4 or 5 days, and then at one point during their escapade they were actually caught by the police and they managed to get away and go back on the run. So it wasn't as if they were lost. They were definitely, you know, going somewhere with a purpose. And that story sort of resonated with me. I wondered about them for many, many years. I sort of had that little story sort of sitting away at the back of my head. But then 2 years ago, and this is where my mum comes in, 2 years ago, my house got flooded and I had to unpack a whole heap of stuff that was damaged. And one of the things that was damaged was a storage box, just like an old archive box, and that I'd taken from my parents' house and just stored at my house. After my parents died, I packed up their house, and this had memorabilia in it, but I didn't really know exactly what. And so in this box were 67 letters, love letters. So almost half and half, from my mum to my dad and from my dad to my mum. And they traced their love story from, you know, the time that they met, because they were geographically separated. Mum lived in Geelong and dad lived in Lindenau in Gippsland, which for those of you in WA, I'm just trying to think of a geographical comparison, but it's a long way. It's a few hundred Ks. And so they would only see each other on weekends, and in football season, because my dad played footy, it would only be for a short time, because he would come down after footy had finished. In any case, I was inspired by their love story. Now, Frank and Shirley's story is not my parents' story, not at all. It's very, very different. But Shirley, the character of Shirley, was very much inspired by my mum, not the story, but just her characteristics. The selfless woman who put her family first, and who probably never had that appreciated, particularly by her daughter, until the daughter was much older. So it really, it is a tribute to my mum. And I don't think I really realised that, like I was writing it from the heart. And I don't think it was until I got into the second draft that I realised what I was putting into it. So it really flowed really easily, this story. It sort of flew from my fingers on out the keyboard, and, you know, like somebody else was writing it, almost like it was channeled. And so it wasn't until I went back into that second draft and I went, oh, they're my feelings about my mum that I didn't do it intentionally, but that's what came out. So it is intensely personal, this book. And I'm really glad that it is resonating with people, because it's very comforting to me to have that sort of that feedback. So it's lovely.
Yeah, good. I think, you know, when you're writing and if you had tried to do it, if that's your intention right from the start, maybe we wouldn't feel it quite the way that we do. But because it came from that heart place in you, that's why readers are saying these things about it. So, yeah, something for newer writers to think about as well, isn't it? Don't try too hard sometimes. That's that forcing, forcing the funniness and that. Yeah.
It's so true, you know, Monique, because I'm writing another book now and I am trying too hard, and it's really... I'm struggling with it. I'm trying to get that same, because people have resonated with the Shirley character so much. I'm aware of, I'm trying too hard to capture that. And I've actually stepped away from the manuscript for a little while, just to try and let that go a bit, because I really agree with you. I think if you are forcing it and it's not coming, that's not going to work for you. And you won't get that beautiful resonance that we've been talking about. So, but I'm really, thank you so much for saying that, because I really do appreciate it. It's nice to get nice feedback like that.
It is. And look, Danielle's just given some. It says, Lisa, I love the story that flowed through you as though it was someone else gifting you the story. How magical.
Oh, thanks, Danielle.
Yeah, it's a lovely one. Danielle. When I think about my kind of boxes that a book might tick for me, one of those boxes is secrets. So if you give me a book about a big house, that's always something I'm going to go for. But something with secrets in it is definitely a tick. And I was thinking about how in The Secret Life of Shirley Sullivan, we know that there are multiple secrets. I'm certainly not going to give away some of those secrets. But I was thinking about secrets and, you know, whether we all have a secret life, and whether why we hold things back from people, even people who know us really well or love us. And then I was thinking about whether secrets were a good thing to have in a relationship. What would you say about that?
Well, I think everyone does have secrets, whether they're big or little. I think there are, and I actually don't think it's a bad thing, because I think the person that we need to be most true to is ourselves. And so, I mean, I don't mean that we should have lots of secrets and that, you know, we shouldn't share with our loved ones. But I don't think a few little secrets, having something that's just for you, is necessarily a bad thing. And in the case of Shirley, with her secrets, some of them were things that she knew would hurt other people, and it was as much about the other people being hurt by her secrets as it was her being hurt by, you know, the revelation of those secrets. So
Yeah, that's right.
I feel like, and I think in places during the book, she comes to the conclusion that sharing your secrets is not always, you know, you have to think about what your motivation is, and if it's only to unburden yourself, if you're the only person that's going to benefit by the revelation of the secret, then maybe it's not worth doing. And that's something she has to grapple with throughout the book. Is she going to reveal this secret or not? But the funny thing, just talking about and sort of harking back to the way this book evolved, in the way it was easily, no book's easily written, let's be honest, but it was not as painful as some of my books have been to write. And I think that and I think that's, as you said before, because of that, it was so heartfelt. But I didn't know what Shirley's secret was when I started the book. I had no idea. And it was as if she revealed the secrets to me. She told them to me. I know that sounds very odd, but that's honestly how it happened. So I really didn't know. I knew there were secrets, and I knew that they were big and explosive, but I didn't exactly know what they were almost till I got to them. So that was quite an interesting thing to have happen as the writer, to be surprised.
Yeah, that is interesting, because I mean, I find when I'm writing, sometimes there'll be little things, the character, you know, it'll be take me in this different direction. I go, oh, you know, that's okay, let's go with that. But yours is not one that I would necessarily think you didn't know about, so that surprises me a little bit. But I think you spoke about this before somewhere else, was when you were touring over this way last year. And were you talking about that you're more of a person who doesn't plot everything out?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
In that sense, it doesn't surprise me. So
yeah, I find that what happens, and I think this book that I was saying earlier that I am struggling with, I had to write a whole synopsis for that to give to my publisher, and when I plot too much, it takes the magic away for me, and it actually stifles my creativity. So I feel like I need to set that aside and either do something else or reimagine it in my own way and just let the characters take over, because as soon as I try to fit it into an outline or a plot, it just feels stale to me. And I know, and I'm not saying that's the right way to do it, because I know many really talented writers who, for instance, Sally Hepworth, she's a plotter, and she's tried to get me to plot before. It doesn't end well, but you know, her books are brilliant and she plots really tightly. So there is no one right way. It's the way that works for you. And it takes a while sometimes to figure that out. But I feel like I'm kind of finally starting to work out what my own process is, maybe.
Yeah. I think one thing I've learned, I guess, with my own writing is that the process is sometimes different for each book as well. You know, my first book, which comes out later in the year, it's taken me a few years to write, because I didn't plot anything at all. I just let it flow organically. So the next book, I have written an outline, and I'm finding that's working, but I'm not sticking to it. It's just given me the idea. It's like it's told me a bit about the story. But I'm not someone who writes drafts, like these crazy dirty drafts, whatever you call them.
Yeah.
I tend to, like, everything's really nice before I go on to the next part.
Yeah.
But then I tried that with another manuscript and it worked really well. So for me, it changes according to the book.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I've six books. This is my sixth
Yeah.
published book, and I've actually written more than that because there's a few in the drawer, like everyone's got, that
Yeah.
that have never, will never see the light of day. So I've probably written 10 manuscripts, or 10. I reckon I would have 10 or 11 manuscripts, or partials. So when I say partials, I mean 30 or 40,000 words that I haven't
Yeah.
continued on with.
Okay.
And pretty much everyone I've done something slightly different. So, I think, and we're always all learning. There's always something new or something different to try. And I think that's a good thing.
right.
I think, the minute that you think that you know everything there is to know, you can give up.
Yeah,
I always feel
exactly.
like the next book should be my best book. So, I don't know I don't know what process I'm going to use with this next one, but watch this space.
Well, definitely. And I suppose just taking a little bit of a break from it at the moment is a good thing as well, because I'm sure you must feel that pressure when you're getting feedback like this about this book. Do you feel that pressure to make the next book?
I do.
And wow.
And I've kind of slipped under the radar a bit up until now. Like
you have.
I've had 5 books, and I've had, I've got some loyal readers, but I haven't ever really had a book that has had as much attention as this one. And it's fantastic. I'm loving it. I'm loving that it's resonating with people. It's fantastic. But there is that little bit of pressure. And I'm actually glad that this has happened to me sort of mid-career, I guess, that I've got a little bit of experience under my belt, because I know that there are debut authors that, that's fantastic for them, that they have a major success.
Straight away, yeah.
But I imagine that they must feel an enormous, particularly if they're young writers. But even if not, if it's your first book and you have a massive success and hit it out of the park, then where do you go? And people do, not necessarily intentionally, but their expectations are raised, and they're waiting to see what you're going to do next. And I think that would be very difficult if you weren't experienced and if you hadn't already sort of ridden some of the highs and lows of the publishing world.
That's true. Marcus Zusak took 13 years to write his next one. So you imagine that pressure, to come out. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's right. Yeah. I'm going to ask one more question because we've got to wrap up shortly. And this question is one that Jessica asked, and it was really just about your family and how they feel about your writing, what kind of support you get from them. Did you keep it a secret from them? Tell us a bit about that.
So my immediate family, I guess. I've got 3 boys, as I said, and I started writing for publication. I've written my whole life, but started writing for publication when my youngest was when he was a newborn, really. So he's never really known anything else but mum being a writer. I was a teacher as well at that time, so I was teaching and writing at night. The other 2 sort of more knew me as mum the teacher, and I've also had a business as a professional organizer for a while.
That's right.
So the writing, I think the boys, my kids are quite proud of their mum. They get excited when I have a new book out. But it's not really a massive, particularly to Alex, my youngest, not really a massive deal, because ever since he can remember, he's been, I've been published. So I was published I think the first time when he was about 7, I think. Oh no, maybe not. Maybe it was 10. I don't know. But he's sort of quite used to it. The others are a bit more impressed because. But my husband, it's interesting because I've been talking with a group of writers about this recently, about the type of support you get from your family, and whether your partner reads your manuscripts and that sort of stuff.
Yes.
And mine doesn't. Doesn't mean that he's not supportive, but he doesn't really understand, I don't think, what it is what I do. Like, he understands generally that I'm an author, but I don't think he really understands. He's not a creative person. He works in IT. He's always supported me in terms of like childcare. We, when I've needed to go to conferences, and we split, like when I was, when the kids were needing, childcare, we've both sort of, juggled that together as a team. So he was supportive in that way, and has never complained about me being away for work, for things like conferences or doing live events. He's never. But on the other hand, he's never read one of my books, which I'm pretty well okay with, because I think, he's an IT specialist, he's a systems engineer, and I don't want to have to like delve into his work world. So we've got lots in common. We do lots of things together. So the work world's kind of not one of them. But just this last little point is, sorry, we're probably over time, Monique, but
it's okay.
I think being at home during this COVID time, I've been, during the lockdown, he's been working from home and I've been working from home, and I think he's realised a lot more what it is that I actually do during the day, and I think that sort of opened his eyes a little bit. So it's kind of been good for that. But he's generally supportive, but just not into reading my books. He likes, Lee Child and that kind of stuff.
And that's fair enough.
He's not my reader.
Yeah, and that's something I think that we do need to remember is who are our readers. Not all of our friends, not all of the people we know in our family, or they're not all going to be our readers. And if they read our book, they might not even like it. So let's focus our attention on who our readers are, I think.
Exactly.
And that was a fascinating conversation, because I did see that one as well about, how supportive your partner is of, whether they read your manuscript. And I'll just share, mine is reading mine at the moment because it's about to go to the publisher. And this is what he does. So he has the iPad in his hand and he's reading it, and then he just goes, gets his pen and his note, and I'm thinking, like, I'm next to him, this is in bed at night, and I'm going, what did he write down? Like, what is it? So,
you know what?
I'm thinking it's not the best time.
See, this is why I don't do it, because I'm not a very, I'm a very grumpy person. So not grumpy, but I don't take criticism well. I need to, I like written criticism so I can digest it.
Yes.
And then be okay about it. And if he's reading it, he'd be saying, what does this mean? And then I'd be annoyed with him and we would argue. Yeah. So it's best that he doesn't, I think.
We have had a couple of those moments where I've just gone, what now? Which word is wrong now? But anyway, but bless him, he wants to, and so I'm really happy. But anyway, like I said, we do have to wind up now. I've had such a great time talking to you. I have another whole stack of questions I'd love to ask you, but I know that there's in the event on Facebook, if you have a look there's a couple of other questions from Jessica you might want to answer as well.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's been a pleasure talking with you today and just finding out more about this particular book, but about you as a person and about why you write what you write. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so pleased we could finally get together, Monique. It's been great. Yeah. Thank you.
And let's hope next time it's with supper.
Yes. I like supper.
Yeah, me too. All right. Well, thank you, Lisa. Okay.
Thanks, Monique. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Stories on Stage Online Edition today. If you like a story with warmth, with heart, with authenticity and memorable characters and a bit of a laugh, then pick up this book by Lisa Ireland. Lisa's books are available in print from Booktopia, from her publisher and from bookstores, and also from online bookstores. Next week I'll be chatting with Leah Swan about her book Shearwater. I hope you can tune in for that. Bye.